Students, now let us discuss about the different habitats of different plants. This is a lotus plant. Look at it carefully. Do you know where it grows?
It grows in water.
This is a hydrilla plant. It also grows in water. Plants like a lotus plant and a hydrilla plant grow in water. Plants like a water lily plant, a water cabbage plant, a duckweed and a Vallisneria plant also grow in water. Plants which grow in water are called aquatic plants.
So, plants like a lotus plant and a hydrilla plant are aquatic plants.
Plants like a water lily plant, a water cabbage plant, a duckweed plant, and a Vallisneria are also aquatic plants.
Water is the habitat of all the aquatic plants.
Now have a look at these aquatic plants. Do you know their names?
The first one is the lotus plant. The second one is the hydrilla plant.
Now, do they grow in the similar way?
No, they don't.
Some parts of the lotus plant are inside the water, while some parts of the lotus plant are outside the water. The lotus plant is not completely inside the water, but the hydrilla plant is completely inside the water.
Although both of these plants are aquatic plants, they are different from each other.
This is a water cabbage plant. Look at it carefully. Isn't it floating on the surface of the water?
Yes, it is.
This is a water lily plant. Unlike the water cabbage, it is not floating on the surface of the water. It is fixed at a place. Both the water cabbage plant and the water lily plant are aquatic plants. But they are different from each other. On the basis of whether the plants are fixed at a place or whether they are floating on the surface or whether they are completely inside the water, we can divide the aquatic plants into three different types.
They are floating plants, fixed plants, and underwater plants.
Students, now let us discuss about the different types of aquatic plants in detail. Do you enjoy boating?
Obviously, you do.
The boat floats to move on the surface of the water, doesn't it? Now, have a look at this water hyacinth. Like a boat, a water hyacinth, too, floats on the surface of the water.
A pistia also floats on the surface of the water.
Now, look at this plant. It is a duckweed plant. The duckweed plant also floats on the surface of the water.
So, plants like a water hyacinth, a pistia, and a duckweed float on the surface of water.
Aquatic plants which float on the surface of the water are called floating plants. So, plants like a water hyacinth plant, a pistia plant, and a duckweed plant are floating plants. Now have a look at this object. Do you know what this is?
It is a sponge.
The sponge is very light. Now take a look at this water hyacinth. The body of the water hyacinth is also like a sponge. The spongy body helps it to reduce its weight.
A duckweed too has spongy body. The spongy body of the duckweed also helps it reduce its weight.
So, floating plants like a water hyacinth and the duckweed have spongy body to reduce their weights. Students, you must have seen an electric bulb, haven't you? Now have a look at the leaf of this water hyacinth. Did you see a bulb-like structure at its base?
The water hyacinth plant has bulb-like leaf base.
The bulb-like leaf base is also known as the bulbous leaf base. So, the water hyacinth leaf has bulbous base. Do you know why the water hyacinth has a bulbous leaf base? Well, let me tell you. You all know that a balloon filled with air is very light. It goes up into the air, doesn't it? The bulbous leaf base of the water hyacinth is also filled with air. Air-filled bulbous leaf base makes the plant body light. So, the water hyacinth plant can easily float in the water.
So, aquatic plants like water hyacinths have bulbous leaf base which helps them to float in water.
Students, we have discussed about the floating plants. Now let us discuss about another type of plant. Now look at this lotus plant. Can you tell me where the root is?
The lotus root is fixed inside the mud at the bottom of the water.
Yes, you are right. The lotus root is fixed inside the mud at the bottom of the water. Unlike the water hyacinth plant, the lotus plant is fixed to a place at the bottom of the water.
water lily plant is also fixed to a place at the bottom of the water.
Plants which remain fixed to a place at the bottom of the water are known as fixed plants. So, plants like a lotus plant and a water lily plant are fixed plants. Students, you have already learnt that the lotus root is fixed to a place at the bottom of the water. However, the upper parts of the lotus plant reaches the surface of the water. Have you ever wondered how this is?
The lotus stem has an empty space inside it. That is, the lotus stem is hollow. It is soft and spongy as well. Hollow, soft, and spongy lotus stem helps the underparts of the lotus plant reach the surface of the water.
Now, take a look at the lotus leaves. Aren't they broad?
Yes, they are.
These leaves help the upper part of the lotus plant to float on the surface of the water. Now, look at the lotus plant and the water lily plant together. Are there any similarities between these plants?
Yes, there are. Like the lotus leaves, the water lily leaves are also broad. They help the water lily plant to float on the surface of water.
Like the lotus stem, the water lily stem is also hollow, soft and spongy. This stem helps the water lily reach the surface of the water. Now, take a look at the flowers of both the lotus and the water lily. Aren't they on the surface of the water?
Yes, they are. They are on the surface of the water.
All the fixed plants have similar kinds of leaves, flowers, and stems. Students, so far we have discussed about the floating and the fixed plants. Now, let us discuss about another type of plant. You all know that this is a water lily plant.
Some parts of the water lily plant are outside the water, and some parts of the water lily plant are inside the water.
Now, look at this plant. It is a hydrilla plant. Tell me, is it completely inside the water?
Yes, it is. All the parts of the hydrilla plant are inside the water.
Unlike a water lily plant, the hydrilla plant remains completely inside the water. Have a look at this grass plant. It has ribbon-like leaves, hasn't it? Do you know the name of this plant?
It is a Vallisneria plant. Like the hydrilla plant, the Vallisneria plant also remains completely inside the water.
Plants which remain completely inside the water are known as underwater plants. So, plants like a hydrilla plant and a Vallisneria plant are underwater plants.
A pondweed is also an underwater plant.
The underwater plants are also known as submerged plants. Students, you all know that a banana leaf is very flat. Now look at the Vallisneria leaf. Is it flat like a banana leaf?
No, it isn't. The Vallisneria leaf is narrow instead.
Like the Vallisneria leaf, the hydrilla leaf is also narrow. So, underwater plants like the Vallisneria and the hydrilla have narrow leaves. You all know that the plants breathe in air through the stomata in their leaves. Now have a look at this Vallisneria. It has leaves. But unlike most plants, it doesn't have stomata in its leaves. Then, doesn't it breathe? Think for a while.
Vallisneria plant is a living thing. Certainly, it breathes.
Have you ever wondered how the Vallisneria plant breathes? Well, let me tell you. The Vallisneria plant breathes through its general body surface. Like the Vallisneria plant, the hydrilla plant and the pondweed also breathe through their general body surfaces. Students, now look inside this aquarium. You can see fish swimming in the water. Now take a look at the bottom of this aquarium. There are Vallisneria plants. We grow Vallisneria plants in the aquarium. Do you know why we grow Vallisneria plants in the aquarium?
As Vallisneria plants are submerged plants, they are adapted to grow underwater. Due to this, Vallisneria plants have less chance of dying or decaying in water.
Yes, Vallisneria plants are submerged plants, and they help to keep the water clean. Hence, we grow Vallisneria plants in the aquarium.
We grow hydrilla plants as well in aquariums.